afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the Q3 quarterly pet insurance price webinar from Pearson Ham. For those of you who haven't been to one of these before, my name is Frances. I'm the product manager here for insurance price tracking at Pearson Ham Group. I think we'll 2 minutes past now, so we should have plenty of people joined. I will kick off, like I say, for those of you who've not been to one of these before, just give you a little bit of background on who Pearson Ham are and where our data comes from. And then, as usual, I will jump into some trends we have seen in the pet insurance industry over the last quarter with different brands and pricing and market factors and so on. So let me, sorry for those of you who've seen these slides before, just give you a bit of background. Pearson Ham, so we are a pricing consultancy. We collect in my team insurance pricing from using consumer panels. We collect insurance quotes through the main comparison websites. As a pricing consultancy, we are well versed in what is normal in pricing. We have sort of an expert team who are able to use data cleansing to give a realistic view of the market and see through the noise to pull out key metrics to help you to understand what's going in within the rather opaque world of insurance pricing. So this webinar focuses on pets, but we also provide insights on insurance for car, not necessarily that car, home insurance, van and travel. So Stephen Kennedy does car insurance webinar and my colleague Sam will do a van insurance webinar next month for the quarter as well. So if you're interested in any of those other insurance types as well, feel free to drop us a line through the contact form on Pearson Ham's website. Good, and then again, just to give a bit of background on our methodologies. Like we say, we run consumer panels through the comparison sites. The profiles we are using are always real people. We always have consent to run their details and collect the quotes from the websites themselves. So we don't do anything without permission. We find that gives us naturally sort of the cleanest data, sort of people able to pass credit checks and with sort of consistent data feeds that we're not at risk of disruption from website blocking. Good, lovely. So let me kick off just by looking at what has been happening in pet cover for the last quarter. So we're seeing small but steady growth since the start of July, small increases each month. So that puts Q3 up by just under 1%, but that is after a period of decreases earlier in the year. So for context, this is how the top 5 average prices is looking for lifetime cover from any level of cover over the last 9 months. So it sort of swaps every quarter, really, which means I have to change my slides from up to down to up again. So we had quite some large decreases back in Q2, which have now sort of flattened out generally as we've gotten into Q3. So it looks like there was a sort of a short but fairly intense period of decline partway through the year. So that leaves prices since the start of the year still up ever so slightly, about 0.7. If we look at year on year, there is still negatives here. So prices, if we're comparing October 24 to September, are down by 3.5%. But a good chunk of that is what we see there in November when prices fell by 4.5% during the month. So that's largely what's contributing to that big decrease year on year. Good, and then splitting that out, so that top blue line, that 0.97 year on year is the decrease we saw. This is just from cover from 1K. So if you imagine quotes returned on a comparison site are sorted like low to high with every cover level showing. Top prices are down by, like I say, about 3.5% year on year. If you are looking at higher cover levels, so if you've got customers that are filtering results saying I need at least £2,000, £3,000 worth of vet care for my policy, you're seeing prices moving slightly differently there. Year on year, certainly, we saw larger decreases in July for all cover types except 1K. Since then, however, we haven't seen a lot of change really at any price point. since June. So prices are largely flat there. So while we have been diverging slightly from the sort of the cheapest cover versus sort of higher cover levels over the last 12 months, this quarter at least has been fairly consistent across all price points. Good, and then throwing in there as well, so we saw lifetime everything previously was lifetime cover. If you're looking at max benefit and time limited, slightly more volatile pricing there. You have far fewer prices on a results page for those types of insurance. So top prices tend to fluctuate a bit more because you've got fewer insurance quotes returns. And there again, we've also seen generally a decrease year on year for max benefit and time limited as well. And then looking at some slightly different dimensions. So we've got animal age here. We've certainly seen, again, over the last 12 months, a bit of variation there. So animals aged 4 to 6. We've seen slightly stronger decreases, particularly in June. Again, between the start of July and the end of September, so all the way through Q3, generally in line with one another. But again, there's sort of variation in how top prices move depending on the age of your animal. Often it comes down to the providers that are competitive in that space. There's quite a bit of variation between who will give you a best price depending on what age the animal is you're quoting for. Good, and then looking at this quarter, there is actually a bit of variation whether you're insuring a cat or a dog. Again, you'll have slightly different insurers coming out as competitive depending on what kind of animal you've got. But we've actually seen premiums increasing reasonably strong for cats, actually. So for July through to September, there's a few step changes there, whereas the sort of the steady increase is more with prices returned for dogs. Good, and then animal type as well. Again, we've been observing this over the past 12 months that prices for crossbreeds have not come down by as much. In fact, they've risen slightly compared to quotes for mixed breeds, that would be mongrels and moggies, or pedigree animals as well, have also seen a decrease year on year. So again, it depends on the type of animal, but it seems that insurers are a little more cautious when it comes to price decreases, particularly for crossbreed animals. Nice, excellent. And then looking at different regions as well. So this is something that we've maybe seen more of a variation on. Perhaps maybe 2-3 quarters ago, you could see prices were deviating slightly. There was potentially some insurers that were looking at vet costs in different regions, if there was sort of an eye on how much pet care costs in the north versus the south of England, etc. We did see some slightly more targeted pricing when it came to the area that the policyholder lived in. However, in the last 12 months, that's been a little bit more close together. Apart from that big decrease in November, we've generally seen all regions move together. So if you're looking year on year, again, it's decreases across the board, but slightly smaller decreases for quotes in Scotland, Northern Ireland and Wales, as well as some of those top ones there too. Whereas it's sort of the south and London that saw slightly larger decreases coming out of November. Lovely. Now I've hinted at brands, so we won't go into naming any specific insurers, but if you can potentially have a guess, certainly at who a few of these are, just by looking at the market share. So this is of the data that we collect. How frequently is each insurer returning a price that appears within the top 6 quotes on a results page? So this would be for all vet fee limits. You're getting cover from 1K for lifetime. About 9 in 10 results pages we collect have got insurer 1 appearing at somewhere within the top 6 ranks. And then you can see rank there too. Insurer 2 also have a very large market share. And then below then it's a little bit dilute. So there's quite a mix between those insurers below. But there's certainly those top 2 insurers, year to date, rank change, no difference there. They have been the largest market share for any vet fee limit since the start of the year. Prices there not changing much either. You can see this is their premium movement since the start of the year. So insurers below we can see have made decreases, but those top two insurers are largely flat since the start of the year. If we then look at where that market share falls, if we start to introduce minimums on vet fee cover, who then is appearing somewhere within the top 6 ranks of the screen. So again, you've still got insurers 1 and 2 there, making up quite a considerable amount of share for slightly higher cover levels as well. But you can start to see there's a few brands here, sort of higher numbers from the previous leaderboard. They're the same brands, but they are much more likely to return a competitive price at slightly higher levels. And you can certainly see sort of the ranks increasing. Insurer 15 has moved up 8 ranks. Some of these ones down here have moved up, I mean, essentially from not existing at the start of the year to being sort of the 10th and 11th most competitive for 2K cover. And you can see there as well sort of corresponding large price decreases. We've seen some insurers, and again, you might have some hunches who are going with some quite aggressive decreases to pick up market share for pet. 3K cover, again, you've got insurer 6 and insurer 15, both of whom have made sort of 20% decreases since the start of the year and gained a lot of market share because of it. If you'll recall from the previous line chart as well that showed the index for top 5 prices for each cover level, 3K cover has seen the biggest decreases since, well, no, it was year on year, wasn't it? So this maybe explains we're seeing quite a bit more competition, particularly targeting that 3K cover level. And that's why top prices have dropped so much, because we're seeing a lot of brands vying for market share in that segment. And then looking at 4K cover, so again, you can see year-to-date rank change. Insurer 15 were never at the top 6 at all, sort of at the start of the year, and now sort of as we get into the end of September, sort of about 2 and 5 results pages have got insurer 15 somewhere within the top 6, and the same for insurer 6 as well. Insurer 1 is that's the lowest share that we've seen them have, so only 50% of the time that they're making it into the top. So again, we're seeing a lot of change there. As we go back to 5K and then maybe sort of 5K plus, the more premium level, it's starting to look a bit more stable here. We haven't seen so much competition for market share for the higher end. A lot of that movement, a lot of sort of new logos entering the market, discounts applied, market share grabs have been sort of occurring kind of between 2 and cover from 2 and 4K. Whereas if we look at this board, you can see sort of year-to-date rank change. It's still the same top 3 insurers that are generally appearing at the top of screen for customers from that level. So like I say, it is worth reaching out or sort of looking elsewhere for more detail on what we've seen change in terms of market share from pet insurers. From our point of view, a lot of that decrease that we've seen, I think I mentioned this last webinar, is from a lot of new product activity, particularly in Q2. So we're seeing insurers adding new cover levels. So maybe when previously a group might have had a 2 and a 4 and a 6, we've seen a lot of insurers start to fill those gaps in. So they've launched a 1 and a 3 and a 5 and a 10 and a 12 and an 18 and so on. So a lot of saturation going on, certainly over the last 6 months or so, coming into Q3 as well, less so maybe the last few months, which is why I think we've seen price decreases flatten off a little bit. But I think if it comes to price changes in the market and what's driving that, why are we seeing so many decreases, it's not really to do, from our understanding, with external market forces, sort of cost of vet cover or anything kind of driving that. It's been very competition driven. There has been a lot of competition over the last few months, which I think is what's pushing prices down in the market. Good, and then just a few other things just to touch on that relate to pet insurance either now or definitely will do over the next few months and coming up. So one of them, you probably caught this one, was the CMA. We've been tracking this for 18 months. This has been going on, looking into competition issues within the veterinary industry. So that was mid-October. CMA issued a provisional decision on some anti-competitive actions that they're going to take to help to support pricing within the vet industry. So a lot of what they highlighted was the significant competition issues, 63% increase in pet care since 2016, and owners frequently overpaying. And of course, that moves on to pet insurance as well when they're faced with inflated costs to treat an animal. So some of the areas they suggested that might be for reform would be things like mandatory price lists, written estimates for treatment that will cost over £500, and a £16 price cap on prescription fees. And potentially also a sort of a centralised website was suggested as well, so that people can shop around for vet care. So the final decision is March 2026, which fits in nicely with my quarterly webinar. So we'll cover off a little bit more then, but it'll be interesting to see what impact this has, if at all, on pet insurance. In theory, lower cost of claims means lower premiums, but we'll see whether that actually flows through over the next, I guess, 10 to 12 months. Good. And then lastly as well, also relevant to pet owners, this is the Renters' Rights Act, which touches on a lot of areas, not all of which are related to pet insurance, but one provision of that act is that tenants can request to have a pet, and landlords need to respond with a valid reason if they don't want to let them have a pet. So again, this is something that's probably going to be ongoing into the future. Sort of the act was passed in October. We're probably going to see things starting to come into effect from the new year. So there was also an element as well, initially suggested with the act, that it would require landlords to have additional insurance to cover pets, but that was dropped. So ultimately, I think what this is going to mean is there's very likely going to be an upswing in pet ownership from renters that previously their tenancy agreement didn't allow them to have a cat or a dog, who are now able to request them. So I would potentially expect to see maybe a sort of mini boom in pet ownership, and with that sort of higher demand for pet insurance as well. Excellent. And that brings us to the end of the webinar. So these slides are going to go out afterwards, and then we'll put this recording up on YouTube as well, so people can have a watch back if you weren't able to catch the whole thing. If there's any questions as well, either you can stick them in the chat just now and I'll get back to you directly, or you can reach out to Pearson Ham through our website, or I'm Frances Luery, so if you've ever contacted me before, feel free to drop me a line if you have any other questions about pet as well. But we'll leave it there for now, and then I will see you hopefully at the next webinar in the new year. Cheers, everyone. Bye.